Welcome to this episode of the Talent Forge, where together we are shaping the future of training and development. Today, I have special guest Dr. Albert Bramante, author of the book Rise Above the Script, a psychologist, and someone who has been dipping into some AI in terms of talent development. Welcome to the show, Albert.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really
Yeah,
happy to be here.
happy to have you. So tell me, what is it that got you into this talent development space, coaching, training, helping people kind of make those navigational changes?
So, as a child, I was always a bookworm. To give you a very quick intro, I was always loved books about psychology, the brain, neuroscience, communication. That led me to study psychology. I was also very interested in the arts. So I was in the drama club in high school. I took some acting classes as electives during my undergraduate studies. So I enjoyed the creativity side of things. When I received my master's degree, my final internship was at a New York City talk show, working more in the counseling side of things. And that led me to study working with actors. And because I worked with actors, not directly, but kind of like adjacent. So I started off kind of even pursuing a little bit of my own acting and realized for me, I enjoyed working behind the scenes. I worked better with advising actors. So I started my first talent representation or management company in 2004. And then I became a licensed talent agent, which is so pretty much as a talent agent, I work as an employment agent for actors. Now, while I was studying psychology, I was noticing a lot of patterns that were coming up with actors: self-sabotage, fear of success, self-doubt, issues of self-doubt, imposter syndrome coming in. So I did my PhD dissertation on self-defeating behavior and performing artists, which turned into my book, which is really the foundation of my book, Rise Above the Script. So that kind of led me to coaching, more down the coaching space. And then I initially was going to be a clinical psychologist. That was going to be my natural progression. But there was some things that were becoming more and more of a question for me, or maybe even a little bit of disillusionment in my area. So I became more interested in more rapid forms of coaching, hypnosis, NLP, rewiring the subconscious belief systems and patterns. So that kind of led me down to this kind of like that rabbit hole of coaching and personal development.
I,
So that's
I
kind of
love
a
that.
space that I'm in today. And being, somewhat of a mild tech enthusiast, I'm not entirely like into programming and coding, but I do enjoy technology, and so that kind of led me to kind of discovering and writing the AI boom.
I love this. All right. So there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to start with self-defeating behaviors. And what I'd love is, can you give the audience maybe just a quick definition of what is a self-defeating behavior? What is a self-defeating mindset? And then how do I notice this? Because I guarantee they've been in audiences where that type of archetype has come up. So what would be some of the signs that somebody's exhibiting self-defeating behaviors or maybe that sort of fear of success?
It would be sort of like doing certain behaviors that are holding themselves back, maybe being late to appointments, not preparing fully for what they could do, or not really living up to their fullest potential. So it's like you could do so much, but you're only doing so little. And even the language that they talk, a lot of times, I'm not good enough, or I'm just unlucky in life. And what's really going on here is these are self-imposed limitations.
More of a fixed mindset, if you will.
Yes, exactly. And rather than looking at, even if they make a mistake or they fail at something, a person with a fixed mindset is that said, I told you I'm not successful. I told you I'm not lucky. Whereas someone with a growth mindset is gonna be like, okay, well, this happened. What can I learn from this? And what can I
Yeah.
do differently next time? And so a person who is self-sabotaging is what makes this a very sneaky behavior is a person doesn't even realize they're doing it.
Sure.
And they just think they may just work on I see I can't catch a break. Life is unfair, or I just can't do it. And so they become just stuck in these patterns and these cycles of, what we might consider bad luck. So that would be the first thing. If someone like has a victim mindset or a mindset of like bad luck, that might be the first clue to start looking at what's going on here.
Okay.
Are they their own worst enemy?
Well, and you see that behavior every day in the office, right? You see people who are coming in late that have all the potential in the world, and a lot of times, you know, the stories we tell ourselves, or that I've heard a lot of leaders or managers say is, "Oh, it's because this person's young," or "Oh, it's because they're lazy," or "Oh, it's almost like whoever it is coming up with their own interpretation of what those facts are. How do we get to the core of like maybe what it is that's actually that person's story? So the person who comes in late obviously doesn't go, yeah, I'm lazy. I just come in late all the time. Or, I really don't want to be successful. I don't think they're feeling that way. How do we draw that out
No.
of them?
Well, we notice patterns. I was like, always, if they're coming in late all the time, I mean, versus, okay, one day there could be construction on their way to work.
Sure.
Okay, fine. Or something happened at home, emergency happened at home. But if it's a consistent pattern where they're late week after week or day, that may be a pattern that we need to look deeper into this. Why is that person not leaving earlier enough? Why is that person not, working, making sure that they're on time? What's really going on here? And then we have to look at their overall happiness level. Maybe they're just not happy with their job or they're not happy at that company. And we may not be able to change their jobs, obviously, with the way the economy is, but what we can do is start working at some core feelings about their job. So you have to start looking at behaviors. What's happening on a consistent level? Again, are they always underperforming? Are they always, not doing what they can do? Because so with self sabotage, no one walks around saying, "Hey, I'm self sabotaging today."
Right. It'd be
We don't
nice if
realize.
people had that level of awareness and honesty in like what it is that's creating their behaviors,
Well,
but
yeah, if you had that level of awareness or honesty, you wouldn't be doing it.
mhm.
Quite frankly, you would not be self sabotaging because it's differently.
Right.
So a lot of times it's helping people become aware of this. Like, look, okay, what's really going on here? Always late, you're always doing things, and I know you can do it. I know you can because you're smart and you're intelligent and resourceful. So it's looking at certain behaviors. Another habit a lot of people say, I don't have any time during the day. I'm so busy.
Mhm.
But yet you see them on social media, you're scrolling on their phone for moments, even hours at a time.
Yep.
You know,
I've always made
something.
that I've always made that relevation of whenever I see somebody that says, oh, I don't have any time. It's like, oh, you have no time? You're so busy? Well, if you got a phone call that said, hey, my garage is on fire, are you going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have time to deal with that. Give me a call in 2 weeks and I'll definitely take that on. Or are you going to shift? And usually time is a lack of prioritization. That's one
And,
of the things that we see.
yeah, exactly. And that another mindset I think that we have to kind of get out of is that, oh, I'm too busy.
Hmm.
I hear people say this, I wish I could do this. I'm so busy.
Albert, do you think that it's almost because we is that a defense mechanism or is it because we've like glorified being busy? Like, oh, if you're busy, you must be productive, and those two things do not necessarily line up with each other. Or if you're busy,
No,
you're successful, and that doesn't always line up either. So,
no.
what creates the condition that we want to be busy or that we say that we're busy? Is there something that you've seen?
I think it could be distraction. I think
Okay.
it could be, trying not to face whatever we're feeling, insecurities we're facing, so or things in our life by just keeping ourselves busy. Because I can keep myself busy, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be productive. That doesn't mean I'm going to be successful.
Right.
I keep myself busy doing tasks that are not important to me.
Or that are harmful for that matter. Scrolling on social media, I truly do not believe is the best use of 4.5 hours of our time. So, Now,
Right. And well, that could be busy. I could be busy scrolling on social media,
yeah,
but that doesn't mean that I can be successful or
productive.
productive.
Yeah. So let's dig in because I think now I've studied psychology, but I am by no means a licensed hypnotist. I never went for the clinical side of things. I wasn't interested in actually doing any kind of clinical. I utilize more of an industrial organizational psychology and really help people navigate some forms of behaviors. But you had mentioned NLP, which, for those in the audience that do not know what that is, neuro linguistic programming. And I'll ask you, Albert, give us a working definition that we can play with. But let's talk about hypnosis first, because I'm not a hypnotist. And I know that, like, if you look on TV, you see the illusionist or somebody else, or the sort of like magical incantations of what hypnosis is. Spin the circle, swing the clock, and somebody magically falls asleep. Right? I think I just watched Now You See Me, the magic, the magic movie, and it's Woody Harrelson's character. And I know
Yeah.
that that's obviously there is a very powerful set of evidence of clinical hypnosis and how that can really help people sort of navigate some of the unconscious, the underlying beliefs. Let's dig into that topic because maybe that as a tool is not accessible to me, but I'd love to hear what are some things that I, as a trainer, could take from the idea of hypnosis or an understanding that hypnosis helps us better understand that I could bring into my practice. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's there's different levels of hypnosis. You know, the obviously putting someone into a trance, but then there's also waking hypnosis, conversational hypnosis. You get someone to change their limiting beliefs, you kind of um, help them go from one thought to another. That could be a form of hypnosis. Advertising is hypnosis. How many times do we go into a store with wanting to buy something and then walk out and say, "How did I just buy this?
Mm. So
I didn't
almost
know I
like
needed it."
some of the heuristic systematic processing, can that be considered?
100% confirmation bias, influence, and salespeople. I think are the best hypnotists available because a lot of times they can convince you need something you don't really need.
Right.
But what makes it really powerful is it's you don't even realize they're doing it. It it's really helping, giving convincing somebody to do something, but making them think it's their own idea.
Okay, so it's almost a subconscious inception
Yeah.
concept. All right. So,
So it's like, I think I need to buy this product. And if you really take a step back, I'm like, no, someone suggested that you needed to buy the product, but you went to your subconscious, now you believe you need it. And that's where hypnosis is. So like if I'm working with someone, let's say to stop smoking, which is really what hypnosis is great for with addictions, it's not like I should stop smoking because this person told me to. It's getting someone to say I should stop smoking because I want to.
okay. So now, what is the process of that? And if you and obviously, I'm sure that it's a very complex or it could be a very complex process. But if you were to just give me the highlights or give the audience the highlights, what does that process look like, and how would you
It
help
could,
somebody?
it's really just helping someone bypass the critical factor, which could be mild distraction.
Okay.
Which is why sometimes if you do a formal hypnosis process, we might have you relax a little bit in your mind, calm your mind, clear your mind, focus on something else. Why I tell you, it's like I'll distract you with point A and why I'm telling you point B, where you're not aware of things. And it could be something again subtle as advertising. Look at a lot of commercials. Um,
So
they may be distracting with a puppy or kitten, and you're consciously, oh, look at that. And then in the background, you're hearing this message about buy this product.
yeah.
And next thing you know, when you're out in the store or out wanting to do something, hey, I should buy this. This brand sounds great to me. Not realizing you were primed. I'll give you another example. There was this used car ad company, a car lot in Florida, that did a really brilliant campaign that brought them a lot of money. And in the commercial, they had obviously the salesman telling you to buy all these used cars, but they also had a 7 foot NBA player dressed in a chicken suit doing these crazy dances. Because what are you doing when you're focusing on that guy doing this silly, and you're like, oh, this is so cute. Now your mind is open, your ears are open, and so now the announcer's telling you about all these discounts and come to this car lot. And now all of a sudden you be thinking on the weekend, I need to go check out a car. Let me go check out this lot. For some reason, this lot is making a point to me.
Yeah, this is making me think about a communication model I studied, and this was 20 years ago. If I recall correctly, it was Dr. Petty and Dr. Kakiopo, the elaboration likelihood model of influence. And, essentially they identified two different paths to persuasion, one being the central route, i.e., I'm focused. I'm putting my energy into thinking about it. I'm looking at it logically. I'm looking at the logical structure, and it makes sense. And then there's the secondary, which is the peripheral route processing, i.e., is all of those sub cues that are either contextual, environmental, happening essentially below the conscious focus. So if I'm taking that and kind of hearing what you're saying, Albert, hypnosis can be described as unconscious influence that avoids some of the defense mechanisms that we may be doing either consciously or subconsciously. Would that be accurate?
Yes, and it's really what really speaks to the subconscious, which is very strong
Okay.
and are guiding our behavior. So if I can change your subconscious beliefs, that's where all the power comes in.
Sure. Because those are the ones that are usually overriding our conscious and or logical thinking. So if I'm a
Absolutely.
trainer and a coach, what are some of the things that maybe I could think about to be able to uh, essentially access that aspect of the subconscious, in a
Well,
training session or in a coaching
yeah,
session?
I would watch the language that you use. The language is very, very powerful. I think that's one of the most strongest hypnotic processes is language.
Hmm.
So watching the language that we use not only to ourselves, but even helping our clients come to that by, like even like if I'm going to work with actors, I always say, don't, the words that you should get rid of out of your vocabulary is the word starving, struggling, poor, and
The mindset, essentially, the starving artist, we start to live into those different identification
well,
markers.
that becomes reality. It's like, okay, well, I'm starving, so therefore I must be poor, and I must be,
I've got nothing to
limited.
do.
I have nothing to do. I'm poor, and therefore I'm not going to be successful. But if you start adopting I'm a professional working actor, so you start to then develop those habits, and then even a lot of times, a lot of things is repetition. So even rehearsal and repetition is important. So even if you're working with people as a coach, get them to use a more empowering language and over again. Repetition
Well, and
is so
I'm even thinking about like some of the affirmation work that Dr. Ellen Langer did in the mindfulness versus mindlessness type approach. The identification of, oh, I'm getting older, and all of a sudden we adopt that mentality, we start behaving as such. So this
right.
is, kind of reframing maybe identity politics or, identification markers for the audience is
Well,
maybe one of the first ways.
we will hold on to any identity we adopt.
Yeah.
And so again, going with the older mindset that because we hear the society, we hear doctors, we hear everyone tell us that the older we get, the more limitations we're going to experience, the more pain we're going to experience.
Right.
And
So then we
therefore
just
we
create
expect
conditions. Yeah.
and we create these conditions. And because I can tell you, I know a lot of people that are in their 80s and 90s that defy those expectations that are probably healthier than most 20 and 30-year-olds out there.
Well, and it's really funny. And Albert, I'll share this, from my childhood. At one point in time, a teacher told me that I was not good at mathematics. And for
Hmm.
some reason, it was early. It was like, "Oh, this really isn't your subject, is it, honey?" And I think I was like in second, third, or something grade. I carried that identity all the way up until high school, underperforming in mathematics. But here's the funny thing. And it definitely had an impact on my behavior. I deferred my graduation from my undergraduate degree 2 full years because I was afraid to take the math proficiency exam. Ironically, I'm actually quite good at math. I scored that was the highest section that I got on the ACT when I took the entry exam. I was very good at physics and chemistry, and I now do probabilistic, statistical modeling for some of the research that I do. I wasn't bad at math, but I wore that label, and it had a huge impact on how I
Hmm.
showed up and performed all the way through school until essentially I felt like that label was no longer fitting and kind of
Yeah,
dropped that label.
and a lot of students are living in mentality. A lot of when I was, and I can relate to this too. I feared math, but what was ironic was I did very well in chemistry in high school. When I took statistics for psychology, both advanced and basic, I scored high marks in. I
Yeah.
remember my professor said, "You must have been brilliant in algebra," which, whoa, that was a new thing to me. I struggled. And it was because of I had that belief. And that's where, and even I tell my students there that I teach that when they say, "Oh, I don't like math, or I'm not good in math," I'm like, that's not true.
Yep.
That's not
Yep.
true at all. Because if what is true, yeah, that when we utilize math, we're utilizing a different side of our brain. So, but it requires training in that.
Right.
So it's not that you're not good at it. You just need more training in that area.
Is
You need
that
more practice and more of that muscle.
and maybe as we're talking here, I think about it, is that sort of one of those self-sabotage protection gestures? Like I say, oh, I'm just not good at math because of a potential fear of failure, or like, oh, this is hard because I haven't practiced it, I'm not working on it, I'm not doing it every single day or whatever it is, versus something that we are maybe more passionate about, where we put our energy into it, that we see progress and we see ourselves moving forward. Is that a form of the self-sabotage that we spoke about?
Absolutely, self protection because therefore, when you fail, like because when you do fail, because that's often I would say when if you adopt it, I'm not good in math, you're not going to be good in math, and that but then you could use it as an excuse. See, I told you I wasn't good in math,
Yeah.
but
Right.
and
Right.
I thought because I talked to a lot of even math professors in my field and math tutors in my field, and what I found was that the tutoring centers at colleges and even high schools are so underutilized in math.
Hmm.
Most of the people that really go to the tutoring are the ones that are good in math.
That's
No surprise,
fascinating.
surprise. Yeah. And it's like the ones that really need it are not never there. And it's like sometimes
No
I want to say,
interest, no motivation, and
well,
probably a
how
little bit
can
of
you?
that fear. Yeah.
And it's like, well, how can you be good in math if you're not making an effort to be good at math?
That's fascinating. So, all right, and I think this is really good because we've talked a little bit about hypnosis, and I don't think, as a non-clinical psychologist, I don't think about hypnosis as part of a training set or part of the training tools, but reframing it and really getting a better understanding of, hey, this is helping somebody to get to that subconscious or that unconscious ego, or that, really helping them sort of explore some of this. That's really practical, Albert, and I like that. Let's talk a little bit about neuro-linguistic programming. So NLP, you had mentioned earlier, because you had mentioned hypnosis and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Um, could you give us maybe a working definition that we can operate from for
So
this? Yeah.
it's using the power of mind, your neurology in a sense, and using your language to kind of rewire neurology. Because when you change your language, what starts happening is your neurology will start to rewire itself. So it's using those combinations. So it could be using our imagination more. using, yeah, but also the power of language and combining those two together. So a process could be like visualization. I mean, one of the things we do know, and there's been a lot of studies that if you visualize something and on a consistent basis, you're more likely to be successful. They do this with athletes.
So I actually there's an incredible story about Tiger Woods when he was actually like in his prime. His dad was recounting a story, and basically what would happen is they would go out onto the course, pre a tournament, pre a tour, and he would practice physically. And what ended up happening is after he would go back, they'd go back to the hotel room, he'd shower, he'd eat, and then he would lay down and play that entire round over visually in his brain while laying in the bed. And his dad actually timed him. Like, how long did it take you to physically play that round? And how long did it take you to mentally and visually go back through and play that round again, fixing the things that you wanted to fix? And it was interesting because it was almost exactly the same amount of time. It was like 3 hours and whatever amount of minutes. But I mean, it was like within 7 to 8 minutes of each other. And I was thinking to myself, like, I have never been able, I couldn't visualize a 15-minute conversation to that level. That's such a powerful aspect. But I mean, I guess that's why he was Tiger when he was Tiger, right? So that visualization has been demonstrated to show a lot of impact on our development. How do you get
Yeah.
people to take their visualization to that next level, though? Because when I tell
Well,
somebody, if I say, hey, I want you to visualize success, a lot of people go, and the first thing they're going to think of, Albert, is money, or they're going to think about time, or, like wearing a crown. It's going to be something that's like not going to necessarily really represent what the visualization exercise is. Can you walk us through what that might look like?
sure. Well, it's going to be, you're going to take a particular situation. Success can mean anything to anybody. So pick a situation. Now, whether it's an upcoming test, an upcoming interview, an upcoming match, an upcoming performance, and not just visualize it being successful, but visualize the steps that you're going through it. Each step in the process. And not only just are you imagining each step at a time, it's visualizing it going very well, like everything working so smoothly together. Because the interesting about the brain is it does not know the difference between reality and fiction.
Mm.
Our subconscious does not know the difference between reality and fiction.
I find
So,
that so interesting when you look at time studies or like studies about time and how the brain doesn't necessarily understand the difference between history, present, and future in the concepts of like the neuroscientific studies of grief. It doesn't
mhm.
understand that that person will no longer be there. The brain itself, it's our mind and our sort of that subconscious that actually brings the context to the logical, hey, they're missing. They're not going to be there tomorrow, but I can remember their history and their past and our experiences in the past and relive those momentarily, through different thoughts or through different visualizations. I think that's such a fascinating area of brain science.
Yeah, and that's very empowering when you know how to use it, because then you can, okay, change. So, but I would say, a lot, because a lot, even going back with all science or pseudoscience, what they call manifestation, and which I there's nothing wrong with visualizing, but I think what the traditional manifestation limits is what's the methodology you're going to get there. Yeah, I can manifest. I manifest being rich, but how am I going to become rich? Because if I sit here and tell you I'm going to be rich, I might as well stay here forever. What steps are you going to take? And that's where you can start to visualize not necessarily the end action, but the actions in between. So even if it's like helping students with test anxiety, imagine them taking that test, but going through question by question and being able to answer it.
I
You
think
know,
that's really insightful because I think a lot of times if you were to tell somebody visualize your success on this test, they're going to think about the graded paper with the A on it rather than the process of showing up to the classroom or the studying that was occurring beforehand, or the writing that was done before the studying, or the sitting in class and like the logical steps of behavior that would essentially get us to the outcome, i.e., an A on the test. And I really like the way that you framed that is that systematic process of and what's next step and how is that, what is that success? What does that feeling look like? How does that play out? What's the next step? And really walking through that. So, from the neurolinguistic programming perspective, we know that language is powerful and it does end up creating our reality. And it also is something that, it is something that when we think about the entire world, the only way that we can understand it is through the language. And that's how we communicate it. That's how we live it. That's how we experience it. That's how we tell the stories about it. So, what is it about the programming aspect? Like, how is the programming function of neurolinguistic programming? And, again, breaking the name down, neuro, which is our cognitive, linguistic language, programming is essentially rewriting the script, which
Writing, yeah.
is above, above it rise above the script, your book. What is it about that programming that does help us really kind of find change?
Well, it's a repetition, number one, and rehearsal repetition. And eventually it changes again that limiting belief, going back to math. I'm not good at math to I'm learning math. I can do this. And now when you start to adopt that I can do this, watch how your performance in math is going to improve. So you now just reprogrammed your viewpoint about math, or even just about luck by saying, because a lot, well, because people ask me, what's my secret about luck? How do I become lucky? I said, start feeling lucky. Start feeling that and adopting an identity as being lucky,
See what happens.
and see
So,
what happens.
yeah. So Albert, here we're gonna play a little devil's advocate debate here because I know that there are people out there that immediately go, it can't be that easy. That doesn't work. Hypnosis wouldn't work on me. Neurolinguistic programming, none of those. Okay, so I'm gonna play, and I want you to help me navigate the question. The first one is hypnosis just doesn't work on me. Let's play with that.
So I would then turn around and say, well, what makes you think that?
Okay.
Or why is that? And if somebody says, well, because I just know it is so, and then I'll be like, well, you're kind of hypnotizing yourself to already say that hypnosis doesn't work on me. So you
Because
just gave me proof that there
yeah,
you go, it works. See?
right. Well, and it is kind of funny because when we do have something that we sort of lock in on without the ability to be adaptive or the ability to be open, it's more than likely some kind of, as you said, limiting belief that has somehow or another been embedded there over and over and over again. So being able to sort of open and crack that open is, I think, a powerful practice. Let's play with yeah, but it can't be that fast. There's no way that you can turn me from one to the other this quickly. How would we respond to that?
So I would then turn around and say, have you ever went to a store and spent impulsively on something you didn't need? Or look how fast the phobia is. If let's say somebody's been attacked by a dog, that 5-10 second incident can now create someone to have a dog phobia for life.
Hmm.
So if that can happen that quickly then and there, why can't it happen in a few minutes
Oh,
or an hour?
I really like that. Well, and ironically enough, even thinking about kind of what you said, you could have a traumatic experience that creates the conditions for fear or anxiety or anything else. But even if you went to the Michigan Humane Society, where I'm, in Michigan, and bought a dog, immediately your identity has shifted. You're now a dog parent. You now have to feed the dog. Your behaviors are going to shift from that very moment forward because of a new identity that you've essentially
Yeah.
purchased in a short amount of time.
And if we can do that very quickly, why
Why
can't we
can't
do
we?
other stuff?
Yeah. No, I like that. All right, my last one. Albert, you're saying that I can just visualize that I can fly, and this is one that I always hear, right? Like something that's way out there. Uh, I I can't just visualize that I'm going to fly and then all of a sudden grow wings and fly, right? And I hear this in a lot of cases when people push back on something because when they see a pathway forward or a potential pathway forward, they block it off, right? So,
Hmm.
I can't just visualize it and it'll occur. What's the response there, Albert?
Well, I would say first of all, what's the evidence? I mean, obviously, being able to fly is not a realistic thing. But what is realistic in your life? Now, I can't visualize I'm going to be a multimillionaire tomorrow, but I can visualize that I'm going to make good steps to become even more wealthier than I am today. So start small. What are some small goals? And if if you're already saying it can't happen, you're already visualizing if you think about it by saying you can't and that it's not going to happen. So you're using visualization already. That's what I would tell people.
Yeah,
So
clever.
just switch it, flip it on its head, and do the opposite. Well, I can become more wealthier today than tomorrow than I am today, and this is what I'm going to do. So it's not just the end result, but what's the steps in between. So you know when we're visualizing, let's say again Tiger Woods or anybody else doing a match, it's not just the end result. I won the match, but the process, visualizing yourself rehearsing for that match, visualizing yourself practicing for that match and then doing a blow by blow of every you know round in that game rather than just saying okay I'm visualizing myself winning the game. No, it's a lengthy process.
I'll share a cool study with you. For those of you that are listening that don't think visualization works, there was actually a really fascinating study, and you don't have to be Tiger Woods. They took a bunch of golfers that had been playing at least 5 years. Okay, all different scores. Some were talented, some not so talented. And what they did was they divided them into three groups. Group A did no practice for 2 weeks. Group B did practice physiological, went to the course every day, shot for 2 hours, 2 hours of physical practice. Group C did 2 hours of practice every day, but it was only visualization and it was only just in their mind. They were coached through it, etc. 2 hours a day. At the end of the 2 weeks, they measured them. They measured before, they measured afterwards. Group A actually deteriorated. They got worse because they didn't play, they didn't practice, they didn't do anything. Group B, who practiced physiologically and went out to the course and swung a club, they improved by about 50%. It was Group C, though, that was super fascinating. No swinging a club, no going out, no practice, no physiological practice, just the visualization. 38% improvement in their shots pre and post. So it works. It's well documented. It's well studied. And Albert, I just want to say thank you for bringing this topic into our
It,
space because it's such a powerful topic.
it really is. I would wonder. I would love to see a future follow-up study where they maybe combine both, where
Yeah.
it's like the 2 hour practice and 2 hours visualization. Imagine what that can do.
Turn you into Tiger Woods much faster.
Yes, exactly.
So, Albert, if the audience wanted to reach out and get in touch with you, how might they be able to find you?
So you can find me on my website, albertbramante.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. Just search for Albert Bramante. I'm there. Love to have conversations with you. Feel free to reach out.
I love it. And I really appreciate this conversation. It's always fun to dig in with somebody who's also in the applied psychology or the behavioral sciences and to just kind of wax poetic. So, thank you so much for being here with us, Albert. It's been my absolute pleasure.
Thank you again.
And thank you, audience, for tuning into this episode of the Talent Forge, where together we're shaping the future of training and development.